Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Greg Kimball, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Corporal Brimley Smith. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. We acknowledge Mr. John Harrison, representing the Australian Naval Association ACT section, who will be laying a wreath this evening. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the Australian National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them on the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to able-bodied driver Keith Jarvis. Keith Jarvis was born in 1891 in Adelaide, the son of Arthur and Eliza Jane Jarvis. His family moved to Victor Harbour on the southeast coast of South Australia, and Jarvis attended school there. He became a fisherman and was well known in the district as a keen footballer. He was also a member of the town's lifeboat crew. He spent a lot of time on the water. Jarvis enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in September 1915. He paired a knowledge of horses with his shipping experience and joined the first Royal Australian Naval Bridging Train as a driver. After completing some training camps in Melbourne, Jarvis sailed for Egypt in October 1915. After further training in Egypt, he landed on Gallipoli in November 1915. The role of the bridging train included a wide variety of tasks. The men built and maintained piers and pontoon bridges, helped bring supplies ashore, controlled the supply of fresh water to frontline troops, built a light railway, and carried out repairs on Gallipoli. As a driver, Jarvis was in control of horse teams used to move heavy equipment. With the failure of the Dardanelles campaign, Allied troops began evacuating in December. Most of the bridging team were evacuated by mid-December, but about 50 men stayed behind to dismantle the pontoon bridges used to get the troops onto the boats. They were the last Australians to leave the peninsula at the end of the month. The bridging team returned to Egypt, where they were stationed at Kubri on the Suez Canal. Here the men operated pontoon bridges, allowing troops, horses and equipment to cross the canal, but also allowing shipping through. In July, Jarvis was admitted to hospital sick, but returned to his unit within a few days. He was again sent to hospital with an unknown malady in August, beginning a pattern of sickness that was to continue for the rest of the year. He suffered from bronchitis much of September and was again in hospital at the end of October. Towards the end of November, he was admitted to hospital a final time. His records showed that he had been diagnosed with pernicious anemia, an autoimmune disease of which he died on the 30th of December 1916. Keith Jarvis was buried in the Suez War Memorial Cemetery in Egypt, alongside more than 500 Commonwealth servicemen from the First World War. Jarvis was a well-liked member of the unit. A comrade in the bridging team recorded in his diary that the day of the burial was a sad day for the men. In Victor Harbour, the local newspaper reported that news of his death had cast a gloom over the town and district. The Jarvis family sent 4 men to the war. Keith's father, Sergeant Arthur Jarvis, served with the Remount Corps and returned to Australia in 1916. His younger brother, Private Harold Jarvis, took part in the landing on Gallipoli with the 16th Battalion before being invalided back to Australia in 1915. His youngest brother, Lance Corporal Eric Jarvis, served in the 10th Battalion and the 5th Division Signals Company and earned the military medal with 2 bars. He returned to Australia at the end of the war. Able-bodied driver Keith Jarvis is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember able-bodied driver Keith Jarvis, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man laying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.